and welcome to the Flourishing Introvert Talks with me, Jo Rawbone. This is the podcast that celebrates the natural gifts of introverts so that we can flourish in all situations. Episode 169, What Really Frustrates Introverts? Or how easy it is to get yourself wound up, and what to do when you realise it's happened. I was really pleased with how my ensemble had come together the day of the in-house training. My look was classy yet simple and consisted of a few well put together, moderately expensive pieces. I knew the day wasn't about me, I was only a participant, but I always made an effort, especially when I went to head office. After all, I was one of only a handful of female consultants and one of even fewer introverts. So understated but not unmissable was my intention on this day. We had just been exploring the importance of cross-referring our clients to other specialists, and all was going tolerably well. Until that is, I dared to ask James what I would need to do for him to introduce me to his clients. He looked me up and down in a way that's reminiscent of my mother and said, "Be more presentable." He then pointed to one of my female colleagues and said, "Be more like Sarah." This from a man who... No, I won't lower myself. Behave, Jo. Anyway, Sarah was dressed in casual attire, but was more vivacious, younger, and with Rubenesque qualities. I was hurt and angry and upset, and I'm proud to say that I let James know I was angry, but I kept the other two emotions to myself. On reflection, and now that a lot of water has passed under the bridge, some of this I can put down to my insecurities and my inferiority complex. Honestly, it had been hard not to have both of those when I'd been told for decades that I needed to be different, essentially be something I'm not. Now, this was about 20 years ago, so what triggered this memory? After all, I feel much more secure in who I am, what I'm doing, and where I'm headed now. And to use Caroline McHugh's phrase, I've found my interiority. One of the beauties of this disposition of interiority is that it's completely uncompetitive. She says if we have a superiority complex, we need people around us to be smaller. For the inferiority complex, we need to feel smaller than the people around us. But interiority is entirely unrelative. So it's like a perceptual vantage point, back to our topic of last week then. McHugh says it's a sensibility, an orientation, and the only place in your life where you have no competition. If you haven't watched her TEDx talk, and I know I mention it frequently, please do, and I will make sure the link is in the show notes. The trigger for this memory was listening to someone bemoaning their lot, airing their frustrations, and seemingly powerless to make any changes. I could feel their upset and their hurt, and just like me all of those years ago, they explicitly shared their anger. They felt very similar to how I'd felt in that moment that James said I needed to be more presentable. We explored what was in their sphere of control and influence so they didn't stay powerless, and what they'd need to do to have the confidence to address these issues. There were certainly some limiting beliefs to shift and assertiveness techniques to develop. Actually, these are conversations I have with many of my clients, and it got me reflecting on the things that frustrate us as introverts and, more importantly, where we have the power to make changes. Here are some of the frustrations that have been shared with me recently, and many of them will be very familiar to you. First on the list is the extroversion bias itself. No surprises here then. Clients and acquaintances have shared their frustration at having to work in organisational cultures that value and reward those who behave in more extroverted ways. So they are either natural extroverts or we introverts pretending in order to fit in and get on, just like I did for decades. They shared examples of where promotions seemed to go to those who were outspoken and assertive, whilst they had been quieter, hoping their work spoke for itself. Here's the change that's within your power to control or influence. Rather than complaining about feeling overlooked and undervalued, make a point of quietly sharing the results and plaudits you get from your clients. Unfortunately, most managers are too busy with their heads in the weeds to notice the good work that we quieter ones do. And when it comes to assertiveness, stand up for yourself in an authentic, calm way that leaves people in no doubt. And this is one of the reasons why I'm running the free-to-attend Authentic Assertiveness Masterclasses again. Second on the list is group projects. Ambitious introverts tend to excel in individual tasks and independent work, but struggle when they're forced to collaborate with people where the communication is poor and the ego's great. And yet effective group work and teamwork is often critical to delivering successful results. The recommended change here is to really know your strengths and skills so that you can articulate them clearly and positively at the start of any project. When a group come together for work purposes, there is always that period of forming, as Bruce Tuckman called it. This is where we figure out who's who in the zoo, who contributes what, and who should stay clear of what. Good leaders facilitate this process, but if they don't, step up and get the ball rolling yourself. It might feel a bit scary, but introverted leaders are really respected. We just have to change our beliefs about what we're capable of sometimes. Next on the list is being misunderstood. Sadly, there are still so many myths and misconceptions, but they won't disappear of their own accord. You know it's my big mission to shift the bias, but I also believe we each have a part to play here. I can't keep complaining about feeling misunderstood if I do nothing to dispel the myths, if I don't call them out. I'm not shy, I just don't engage with all of the banter or join the after-office socials. And that's because I'm conserving my energy for things that really matter to me and the organisation. I'm not unambitious. I just believe that my work spoke for itself. But if you need me to share my successes with you more often, I'll happily do that. Let's talk about my career plan at the same time, shall we? I don't lack confidence in my abilities or my opinions, but my thoughtful reflection and internal processing can be mistaken for disinterest, self-consciousness, aloofness even. Underestimating me could be one of the biggest mistakes you make as a leader or manager. So let's help people understand rather than complain about being misunderstood. Next on the list is a lack of autonomy. Ambitious introverts are resourceful, trustworthy, and independent, so struggle with micromanagement and the lack of a clear vision. When not given the autonomy they need, introverts can feel like they are not trusted, which impacts their engagement, relationships, and productivity. Introverts are often the intrapreneurs in a business, but rarely given free rein to explore their ideas. It's a paradox, really, that because they're low maintenance, introverts are both overlooked and at the same time mistrusted. So what could change here? This is about providing feedback to the managers and leaders, combined with assertively asking for what you need. And if that feels like a career-limiting move, my question to you is, are you sure you want to work there? We currently have very low levels of unemployment, so now might be a very good time to explore what else is out there. And if you're not prepared to initiate changes, find a way to contain your frustration. Might sound like tough love, I know, but that's often the love that's needed. Next on my list is not getting enough time to recharge. We know we tend to flourish in those quieter environments where we can top up our batteries as needed. Anyone and pretty much everyone in business today will remark how busy they are, how many hours they're working, how stressed they're feeling. There are several changes that can be applied here, but they're not for the faint-hearted. Prioritization is essential, and the Eisenhower matrix is still the gold standard. Don't just deal with what seems urgent or what people tell you is urgent. Deal with the important things, because some of what's urgent is unimportant and potentially not your job. Knowing your energy cycles is crucial so that you can batch work requiring the most energy and schedule it for when you're at your best. Assertiveness will come into play here, as being able to say no appropriately is a necessary skill. Planning your recharging time and activities into your schedule is also good practice. And always make sure that you have time between meetings to change state, to recharge, and to ready yourself for the next meeting. So many organisations I work with have an unhealthy meetings culture, and this is one of the things I highlight in my bias audit that I conduct with organisations. Next on the list is not being heard. I can't tell you how often clients have told me this, and when we explore what strategies they use to make their contribution, they say, "Strategies? I don't really have a strategy." If you're frustrated at not getting a word in edgeways and not being heard in meetings or group work, but are not even trying, your frustration is frankly gratuitous. There are so many strategies that can be deployed here that will start to change the situation and ultimately shift the bias too. But are you prepared to do something different, or do you just like complaining? More tough love, I know, but my patience does wear thin on occasion. I'm very happy to help those who help themselves, but not the serial complainers. I know it's not easy, but many things in life aren't. It's about being clear what's in it for you and making an informed choice. And if you choose inaction, recognise that was your choice. Last on my list is professional socialising. For those of you in senior positions or aspiring to them, this may feel like a necessary evil, but can actually be quite enjoyable. I know, there, I've said it. Whether it's networking events, conferences or pre-meeting chat, introverts often feel awkward with small talk and find it superficial or uninteresting. The change here is to think about the purpose of the social niceties. They are usually in service of building rapport, to figure out what it is we might have in common, to figure out if we're on the same wavelength and whether we can trust one another. None of that is really achieved through the mind-numbing small talk, but as I've said in other episodes, the meaningful conversations that we so delight in are just the other side of those first clumsy exchanges. So the very best way to master this is by asking great questions so you get the other person talking. Not many of we introverts like sharing about ourselves straight off the bat, so invite someone to talk about themselves. A series of great conversation starters linked to the purpose of the meeting or the conference agenda or someone's business interests is a fantastic place to start. What did you think of that last speaker's ideas? Or which agenda item are you most looking forward to? Something like that. And if something big has happened in your sector, form some questions around that. It's really not as bad as you think once you recognise the purpose of those social niceties and have some useful strategies. There's that word again. And I'm not really surprised, because strategies are what we need to portray ourselves in the best light, authentically and confidently.
I also recommend you develop strategies for interviews, for performance reviews, both yours and those of your staff, and any other situations that you find frustrating. Let me know what those others are too, because you never know how sharing them might help others in the same predicament. You see, we can either stay stuck, feel frustrated and powerless, or we can develop and apply strategies that work for us. As always, the choice is yours. And for me, I'm staying with interiority and keeping my insecurities at bay. It's not always easy, as we're travelling those peaks and valleys of life, remember? And that's why I have my coach, a mentor, and accountability buddies. So much of my travelling is not done on my own. Change is so much easier when we're supported by people who really want the best for us.
If you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, then please subscribe, rate us and leave a comment, because we know that helps other people find the podcast. And if other people find us, other introverts can flourish.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.